Hi, this is Sky. In this video, I'll show you how to build the navigation on the index page. In version 2.7 of the graphics template, the navigation works differently than it used to. Before we had a JSON file that populated each of these buttons and, and gave the buttons instructions, but in version 2.7, I've eliminated the JSON and we'll be using symbols. It's a menu button symbol that you configure. So this menu button right here pertains to the home page. You'll have an icon and a drop-down list for you to choose which icon you want. And then you'll have a label for the button. You'll have the page that you want the button to navigate to. And if you have, if it's an equipment page, you'll be using relativized path and maybe a JSON file. Now, the Open New tab, if you toggle this true, when you click on the button, it'll open up a new page. So I'll show you really quick. So Open New tab is toggled to true. I click on Home, and it opens up Home in a new tab. So you probably won't be using this feature often, but you might want to use it for your control drawings at some point. Maybe not. So there's your home button. And you'll typically use probably all of these buttons for your project. But if you don't, you just go ahead and delete it. Delete, it's whatever. So home, that's a pretty simple button. Now let's click on exhaust fan, right? So exhaust fan has all the same properties as the home button. So you have a label, you have an icon. Oh, I'm clicked on AHUs. So if I click on exhaust fans, you have your icon. I'm using a cog. I have a label and a page that I'm navigating to. So it works exactly the same way as the home button. Now let's look at something different. So let's look at floor plans here. So if you notice, I'm using a circle up icon. That's pretty standard for buttons where you have a drop-down menu. Then got my label, and I don't want to navigate to a different page when I click on floor plans. So this is empty right here. And the floor plans, nothing's being relativized. There's no JSON needed. So, and then we're not navigating to a new tab. We're not opening up a new index. I'll explain this later. But we do happen to have a drop-down menu. So this table right here pertains to each of the options underneath floor plans, right? So if you notice, there's an icon column. We're using a map for each button. We got a label, floor 1, floor 2, floor 3. You'll notice the corresponding labels for the button there. And then we're navigating to a different page for each button. So floor 1 is navigating to building 1, floor plans, floor plan 1.dg5. Floor 2 is navigating to floor 2, floor 3 goes to floor 3. So let's go ahead and test it. I'll click on floor 1. It takes you to floor 1. So when you edit the drop-down menu, you don't want to edit it within the symbol. You want to edit the source table. So let's do that again. You click on table within the menu button, then you go to edit source table. And this table lives in the data flow of your menu button. See? So this table is this table right here. And you can just double click and type whatever it is that you need. Now let's look at something a little bit more complicated, like the air handlers. This is built a little bit differently. So if you notice, the surface layer of the button is very much the same as the floor plans button. And then when you go to the drop-down table, the drop-down buttons table, you'll notice we got our icons, labels, pages. So the summary table navigates to the summary.dg5 page, and you will find that within building 1, pages, summary, right? And we want, so this summary page is just a bunch of logic, and it's being populated by a JSON file. It's being populated by, if you follow this path, building 1, JSONs, summaries, and it's this file right here. So how do you get this? How do you get this file path into this cell right here, right? So here I'll demonstrate. What you do is just get a string block, open up this guy right here, drag the file that you need, the JSON file, copy it to your clipboard, and now you can go ahead and paste it into the cell where that path needs to go. Right? So let's go ahead and test it. Clicked on AHU summary, and now we got our summary table right here. If I click on the page include, it says we're looking at our summary table, and it's being populated by the AHU JSON. Now let's look at how to set up an equipment page within the dropdown. So let me show you what this button does. So if you click on AHU1, it takes you to this graphic right here, this page, and it populates the graphic with this controller information right here, and it gives the title, the equipment name title, AHU1. So the way it works on the button is we've got to open up the table. AHU1, that's the label of the button, right? But that's also the title of the equipment graphic. So when you click on AHU1, it throws AHU1 as a title onto the graphic page. This right here, building 1 equipment AHUs AHU1, that's the DG5 page that we're throwing into the page include. And we have this controller going into the page right here under relativized path. We're not using a JSON for any of these air handlers, so you can just, we're leaving this blank. Now, if you look at the fan coils, it's set up exactly the same way as the AHUs, but using different controllers. And then the VAVs are also set up this, oh, well, the VAVs are set up very similar to the fan coils and the AHUs. The only difference is we're not listing the VAVs, each equipment VAV in this menu because there are just so many of them. If you put every single VAV in this menu, you'd have to scroll down for days. So what we do is we organize the VAVs by floor, and each one of these is going to be a summary table. Right? So if you notice, if you click on the drop-down buttons table, you'll see that each of these buttons navigates to the summary page, but it's being fed a different JSON file. Now, we looked at exhaust fans. Let's look at the central plant. So the central plant has a drop-down menu, right? So you don't have anything filled in under page. Let's look at the drop-down buttons. So a lot of central plant graphics tend to have more pages than an air handler. So you'll notice in this case, I have a JSON file for the chilled water system and another JSON file for the condenser water system. The relativized path works the same way as it does for the other equipment. It's just a controller path that you find within data, right? So I'm just going to arbitrarily choose any controller here just to show you how it's done. So let's look at the heat exchanger right here. In order to get this path, just open up a string value, and you will click and drag into the string value box. You copy this to your clipboard, and you just paste it into the relativized path. So we don't actually need this controller for this overview button, so I'm just going to delete it. But so chilled water system, let's go ahead and click on the chilled water system. If you notice, so when you're using a JSON file with your equipment, like so in this instance, we're using chilled water system. If you're going to use a JSON file, you need to set up the equipment page with the equipment DG5 file right here. So this is the shell, and it's just holding another graphic. So these two buttons right here, rows 1 and 2, the chilled water system and the condenser water system, they have JSONs, right? And so they need to be paired with the equipment JSON, the equipment graphic, the equipment.dg5 file. And then if you notice this file, this heat exchanger system is not using a JSON file, which is why I have the button navigating to the graphic directly. Hopefully that's clear to you. Now the schedules, we have two schedules here. Let's open up the drop-down menu. So there's no relativized path, there's no JSON. Each schedule is just its own individual page. And if you notice, I'm using a calendar icon. If you're curious, like so there's a huge list of different icons. This is every possible icon that you can get within the font library that I'm using. And you don't necessarily know what each of these each of these icons look like. So I built a library for you. You just go to the fonts folder within the root folder, the root directory of your project, and you just double click on the IcoMoon manual, and you get a visual display of what each icon looks like. And say you want to know what icon label it is, you just hover over it in preview mode. So you click on preview, you hover over the icon, and this one's user. So let's look at this wand right here is called Magic Wand. So you would go to the icon property here and just choose whatever icon you want. So there's alarms. This works exactly the same way as the home page and the exhaust fans page. You're just navigating to a specific page, right? So click on alarms, takes you to this page right here. User management works exactly like alarms does. And then let's look at documents. Open up the drop-down buttons table. You got your icon, your label, your building, your page. So let's see. Something that I haven't explained is how do you create a surface layer button that navigates directly to a relativized graphic, or even a graphic that has a JSON on it, right? So let's go ahead and make a button from scratch. Say the template doesn't have a button that you need. You need to make a custom button for your project. You would go to symbols here on the index page, open up menu, and the symbol you need is called button under menu. So go ahead and just click and drag this into the navigation bar. And you don't see it because its positioning, its natural positioning when you drag the button into the menu is, let's scroll down here, 436 and 59. So just make the top positioning 0, the left positioning 0, and your button pops up here. So let's go ahead and give it a icon. So let's put an equipment there, right? So let's put a chilled water system there. So I will use a droplet, a water icon. Then I'll call it chilled water system, and I want it to navigate to our equipment page, or our equipment shell rather. You'll find that under templates. Go to equipment, click, drag it into page. Now let's see, the chilled water system for this particular project is listed here under controller 380,000. So I will click and drag the controller into relativized path. Now this chilled water system has a lot of points, so I built out a equipment JSON. Find the equipment JSON. So I have it under building 1, JSONs. Open up central plant. Here's my equipment JSON. So you throw it in here. And now let's test it. Here we go. We have our chilled water system graphic. Now, another unique thing about this index page compared to the one in previous versions of the graphics template is that you can actually you can reuse this index page for campus sites, right? So this demo project is on a single site. This is just one building, but say you have a campus project and you'll need multiple navigation pages. You would each building would have its own navigation. So you would save this under your building. So I am going to save it under pages, which is under building 1. I'm going to save it here. And so the index file within the root directory, this is going to be your campus page. This is going to be the page, the index page that navigates to your other buildings. So I will show you how to set up your navigation so that this campus index page will navigate to your other building index pages. So I'll just set up one so that you know how to do the rest. When you do one, the rest of them will be set up exactly the same, but just navigating to different pages. So let's use the Home 2 icon. Let's call this label Building 1, and we want to navigate to the other index page that we set up. So I will click and drag this index page into the page property, and we are navigating to a new index. So for this property called Open New Index, we want to toggle that to true. So now, when you click on this button, it will take you to the other index page. See? So that concludes the new symbols. That concludes all the changes made to the index page. I hope that was helpful.